Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. They call him a man of 1,000 words. First there were stories, then there were songs, and now it's just pure poetry. But at every stage his career has gone from success to success. Today he's promised to tell us his real story, but first he's promised to recite one of his favorite poems. Javed Akhatar.
The title of the poem is एक मोहरे का सफ़र। बड़ी कम उम्री में उसने ये जान लिया था कि अगर जीना है बड़ी चालाकी से जीना होगा। आँख की आखिरी हद तक है बिसाते हस्ती और वो मामूली सा एक मोहरा है। एक के खाना बहुत सोच के चलना होगा। बाजी आसान नहीं थी उसकी। दूर तक चारों तरफ फैले थे मोहरे। जल्लाद निहायत सफाक, सख्त बेरहम, बहुत ही चालाक। अपने कब्जे में लिए पूरी बिसात, उसके हिस्से में फ़कत मात लिए। वो जिधर जाता उसे मिलता था हर नया खाना नई घात लिए। वो मगर बचता रहा, चलता रहा। पास आया कभी औरों के, कभी दूर हुआ। वो मगर बचता रहा, चलता रहा। एक घर, दूसरा घर, तीसरा घर। गो के मामूली सा मोहरा था मगर जीत गया। यूं एक रोज बड़ा मोहरा बना। अब वो महफूज है खाने में, इतना महफूज कि दुश्मन तो अलग, दोस्त भी पास नहीं आ सकते। उसके एक हाथ में है जीत उसकी, दूसरे हाथ में तन्हाई है।
वाह साहब, सिर्फ आपकी शायरी कमाल की नहीं मगर आवाज़ भी आपकी कमाल की है।
देखिए, वो शायरी हो या आवाज़ हो दोनों मेरी हैं, और मेरा सवाल ये है कि ये कमाल कौन सा है?
वो तो मुझे आपको बाद में ही बताना पड़ेगा, लेकिन पहले मैं आपके बारे ही आपसे बात करना चाहता हूँ। बाद में आपके काम के बारे बात करेंगे, पर पहले आई वांट टू ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड द पर्सन इन फ्रंट ऑफ मी। टेल मी जावेद, हाउ मच ऑफ द जावेद आई नो एंड सी was created by his childhood and his adolescence?
Karan, I suppose everybody is created by his childhood. As far as psychiatry is concerned, it believes that by the age of 7, a personality is sealed, signed, and delivered forever. We are made by the age of 7. So obviously, whatever I am because of my childhood.
All right, then let's talk about that childhood. What sort of family did you come from?
Well, to put it mildly, I'll say I come from a family of writers, poets. My last 7 generation is of writers. All of them have been known writers. In any respectable Urdu and poetry anthology, you will find their names. And my mother was a writer, my father was a writer, my maternal uncle, my paternal uncles, all of them were writers.
You in fact had no choice but to become a writer.
I suppose so.
Was it a very upper middle class family?
Not exactly. Most of them were teachers. I mean, they were teaching in universities and colleges. So they were middle class people. And in my childhood, middle class used to be middle class. Now, middle class is not as middle as it used to be. Like today, a middle class family owns a car or can own a car. But in our times, I mean, even buying a radio was a big thing for a middle class family.
Were you wealthy or were you just comfortably off?
I'll say I was comfortable, and but not wealthy by any stretch of imagination.
Were you a spoilt child?
I suppose so, because in my childhood everybody believed that there is something special about me, and since everybody was telling me that, I started believing it. I came to know much later that it's not true.
Who spoilt you most, your mother or your father?
I suppose both of them, and my family, my uncles and aunts and friends and so on.
Your poetry suggests that you're particularly close to your mother. Memories of her flow through your poems like sort of golden chords. Is that actually the case? Was that the case?
Yes, I suppose it was true. My mother died when I was 8, but I mean, most of my childhood was spent with her, then my father, because my father was a Communist Party member and he was an activist and a poet. So he was underground that time. There were warrants against him, for him. So I was me and my younger brother we were living with a mother, and she was teaching in Hamidia College, Bhopal, and looking after us. So obviously, most of our childhood was spent with her. Then,
did the absence of your father in any way affect your childhood?
As a matter of fact, it was not a real absence. Maybe physically he wasn't there, but my mother and my father were so close to each other, and she had a kind of a, or almost a worshipping attitude towards him, that we children always felt his presence in the house. We used to feel his khushbu in those clothes that were hanging in the cupboard, or his smell in the room, which was his room, and so on and so forth.
Can you recall the smell today?
Yes, I can.
What do you associate it with? How would you describe it?
मुझे ऐसा लगता है वो थोड़ा सा कुछ सिगरेट और विस्की का कॉम्बिनेशन था, जिसे मैं अपनी बाप की खुशबू समझ रहा था.
Your mother died when you were only 8.
That's right.
Did it leave a deep scar?
Yes, it did. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये जो होती है, इसमें बच्चे को माँ की ज़रूरत बहुत होती है. वैसे तो पैदाइश से ही होती है, लेकिन वो उसकी मेमोरी का हिस्सा, कॉन्शियस मेमोरी का हिस्सा नहीं रहता. और 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 साल जो है, ये एक ऐसी एज है कि जहाँ वो चीज़ों को कॉन्शियस लेवल पे एसेस करना शुरू करता है. And it was traumatic for me to lose my mother. My father was in Bombay. I was brought up by my maternal aunt and my grandfather, and so on. So obviously that sense of loss was there.
Do you carry with you a single memory of your mother that always characterizes her for you?
Well, there's so many memories. I remember that whenever she was a reader and a very avid reader, she used to tell me the stories of the novels. और मैं स्कूल जाता था तो मैं जब बस में वापस आ रहा होता था तो मैं बेचैन होता था कि the moment I'll reach home, she must have read another chapter, so she'll tell me the story. And I love her for that. कि एक 6 साल के बच्चे को अगर आप एक नॉवल पढ़ रहे हैं, you take out time to tell the story in detail to the child, that shows that you are cultivating the child's imagination and mind. That makes her a good mother.
She really did create the literary Javed we know today.
Yeah, I suppose so.
When you moved to Bombay, you were then 18 or 19, you chose not to live with your father. In fact, in many ways it seems you dissociated yourself from him. Why?
You see, my mother died when I was 8. As I told you, I was with my maternal relatives. Then at the age of 15, my father brought me to Bhopal. I lived in hostels there. After my graduation, I went to Bombay. I was 19. Meanwhile, my father had married again, and it's understandable because he was a young man, and he was living all alone in Bombay. It was not possible for him. And but somehow, I mean, perhaps this relationship is jinxed, this stepmother and a stepson and so on. But so I couldn't get along with my stepmother. It must been a kind of a mutual failure. I won't blame her alone. And within 5 or 6 days, I decided to walk out. As a matter of fact, most of the time we take credit for what happened in our life, but life doesn't give you many choices sometimes. So I don't think I had a choice.
But you know, 9 days before your father died, he gave you a copy of one of his books inscribed with the words, "Jab hum na rahenge, to bahut yaad karoge."
That's right.
Did that turn out to be the case?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe I had certain differences with him, but I always respected him for many things. He was a very fine poet and had a very fine mind. He has given me values, my whatever social consciousness or whatever attitudes I have or values I have. I mean, it's his contribution in my life to a great extent.
Did that inscription bring tears to your eyes when he died 9 days later?
Yes, of course, it's rather ironic.
Did it make you feel guilty?
No, it doesn't. Why should it make me feel guilty? But you sometimes, when somebody dies, somebody who was dear to you, you tend to regret many things. you feel that, oh, I wish I had done this, I wish I had told him that, and so on and so forth. But I mean, I'm objective enough to know that if he would have been alive, I wouldn't have done that. Maybe today I regret that. But again, today I come to know that he's there. Again, I won't do it. That is how life is.
The paradox is that in many ways your career in Bombay has almost mirrored your father's career. You were both left-wing supporters with left-wing views. You wrote songs and poetry. You made a mark in a commercial, if not a capitalist world. And you've managed to identify a niche for yourself. Is that irony? Or is that fate teaching you a lesson?
I suppose, I mean, this is in a way carrying on the tradition forward. It's nothing to be surprised about.
But you only wrote your first poem, I think I'm right in saying, after your father died.
That's right. That's right.
So you
He
deliberately
died in
didn't want to carry on the
1976.
tradition while he was alive.
Yes, that's also true, because he was there to carry on the tradition of the family, so there was no need for me to do that.
Was it really
And
that, or was
as a
it that
matter
you
of
didn't
fact, I
want
must
to?
accept, in all honesty, that I knew when I was perhaps in my teens, I knew that I can write poetry, and I chose not to write it.
Kyun?
When you rebel, when you say no, I am an individual. So to assert your individuality, a child says that I will not do what my family is doing or what my father's business is. I will not join it. It's very common. तो वही मेरे साथ था. मैं इसलिए शायरी नहीं कर रहा था कि मैं कर सकता था और की जाती थी हमारे यहाँ. तो मुझे उसी से तो रेबल करना था. हो सकता है कि मेरे बाप का अगर कुछ आयरन स्टील का बिजनेस होता तो मैं शायरी करने लगता, ये दिखाने को कि मैं अलग हूँ. तो इसलिए मैंने नहीं की. लेकिन अल्टीमेटली यू कम बैक टू योर रूट्स. बट नो रिग्रेट्स दैट आई वेंट अवे, बिकॉज दिस इज अ गुड डिटूर. You should always go away for a while from your tradition and collect some experience or some understanding that is totally your own, and then come back to your tradition.
It made a
So
man of
you
you.
enrich your tradition and enrich yourself. If you remain within that straight jacket of tradition, then you won't grow.
जावेद साहब, इस हिस्से का मैं आखिरी सवाल आपको पूछना चाहता हूँ. It's to do with you, but not to do with your roots. The most compelling features I've been watching you talk are your eyes. They smile, they communicate. They're naughty and at the same time they're powerful. Are you conscious of the impact they make?
Well, you have made me conscious at the moment. Now tell me what my eyes are saying.
I don't know. But what your eyes are trying not to say, what your eyes are trying not to say is, why doesn't he change the subject? I'm embarrassed as hell. When Shabana married you, I noticed she calls you Jadoo. Is it the magic of your eyes that captivated her?
अरे भाई ये जादू की भी कहानी है. Actually what happened when I was born in Gwalior, and I was born in a hospital, and my father and some of his friends were sitting there, and then they said that what name we should give to the child. And a friend of my father reminded me that when he married my mother, he had written a poem, छागल की सदा, जिसमें एक लाइन थी, लम्हा लम्हा किसी जादू का फसाना होगा. So somebody said that लम्हा लम्हा किसी जादू का फसाना होगा, तो ये जादू तो ये है, अब इसी का फसाना होगा. So that is how they started calling me Jadoo. And for quite some time my name was only Jadoo. Then when they were sending me to KG, they decided that now, come on, enough is enough, we should find some name for him. So they, because of Jadoo, they had to find a name that will be similar to Jadoo. So my name is Javed because it had to be similar to my pet name.
पहले था जादू, फिर आया जादू.
फिर Javed.
Javed Saab, we have to take a small break at the moment, but I want to continue this conversation a little while.
Thank
We'll be back in just a couple of moments, so don't go away. Welcome back. Javed, in part one we talked about you. I want to now talk about your work. You first became famous as the creator of The Angry Young Man. How much of that was autobiographical and how much of that was creative, inventive, intelligent writing?
See, I have written all those scripts in a team, you know. We were two people, Salim Saab and me. And it must be autobiographical from his point of view and from my point of view, because I think you cannot create anything, you can't write any fiction without putting some part of you in that. It's not possible.
But it's more than just some part. I've just been listening to you talk about your childhood.
Yeah.
And the similarities are so striking. The angry young man was always close to his mother, separated from his father, fighting passionately for causes and principles. That sounds so much like the young Javed who spoke to me in part 1.
Again, I'll say that any resemblance in characters or incidents is totally coincidental.
But not
And the
unintended.
writer or the director or the producers are not responsible.
But do you
No.
accept the resemblance?
Whatever, yes, I do, because it's a fact, but it's totally coincidental. Because first of all, it's not only my creation, it's the creation of two people, two minds. Incidentally, Salim Saab also had lost his mother at a very young age. So perhaps both the minds had this commonality as far as the obsession for mother is concerned. And we had that, perhaps, I don't know, I mean, I'm just trying to analyze it, because when we were doing that, we were not at all conscious of any resemblance or any parallel between the story that we are creating in our own lives. Not at all.
It just happened.
It just happened.
Tell me something else. It's become one of the most well-known concepts that's dominated the Hindi movie industry. How much of its success do you think is because of the concept itself, or the script, or the fact that it touched a chord with society at a particular time? And how much is to do with something you couldn't have ever controlled, the acting of Amitabh Bachchan?
You see, it is not either or. It's everything. I mean, it's the time, it's the quality of the scripts, it's the quality of the screenplay. It's not only the content, but the form. I mean, the competence of a screenplay in Diwar is really very impressive. I mean, I'm not saying because I'm associated with that picture, or in Sholay, or in Zanjeer, or Trishul for that matter. They are very good screenplays. The craft is impeccable. At the same time, that content was very contemporary and very dynamic. We were fortunate enough to get good directors like Ramesh Sippy and Yash Chopra, but at the same time, we were very fortunate that we found an actor like Amitabh Bachchan. And obviously, I don't believe that an actor is some kind of a Katputli or a puppet. He's not. Acting is a very creative art. The actor, a real actor, like Amitabh Bachchan, or Dilip Kumar, or say Shabana, or Nasir, I mean, they just don't mug up lines and speak them. They contribute a lot to these lines. They make them alive. These lines go through their own sensibility, their experiences, their pains, their memories, and their aesthetics, and then they are given to the people. So, in all honesty, one has to accept that Amitabh, as an actor, has contributed a lot to these films.
You've come a long way since those films. Un dino mein, you were famous for dialogues like, "Tu kya karega Kalia, tera kya hoga," and now you're famous for lines like, "Ek ladki ko dekha," ya kuch na kaho. It's been a long journey, hasn't it?
No, it's no journey at all. As a matter of fact, I could have written these lines that time, and I can still write those kind of lines. Maybe they may not become another Gabbar, or they may not become another Sholay. That's different. But basically,
नहीं,
that
मुझे
sensibility.
माफ करेगा. You could certainly have written these lines at that time, but do you think you can write those lines, the Kalia lines today? आखिर रूप की रानी चोरों का राजा wasn't a success.
I'll have to write some bad songs to prove you wrong. It's not that. देखिए, अच्छा बुरा काम दूसरी बात है. मैं समझता हूँ कि if you are a professional writer or if you are a professional actor, आप में रेंज होना, आपको versatile होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. You may not be great, you may not be a great writer, but you should have tremendous versatility. That is necessary.
Gee, but versatility is something that emerges over a career. At any one particular point in that career, You emphasize a particular thing.
वो होना चाहिए आप में, वो कैपेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए. जैसे अब आप सिर्फ गानों ही को ले लीजिए, तो गानों में आप एक तरफ अगर रोमांटिक गाना लिखते हैं तो दूसरी तरफ एक भजन भी लिखते हैं, तीसरी तरफ आप एक लोरी लिखते हैं, चौथी तरफ एक कैबरे लिखते हैं, पांचवी तरफ एक कव्वाली लिखते हैं, और हर गीत में आपकी वोकैबुलरी और एक्सप्रेशन चेंज होना चाहिए. वही जो आप जब गब्बर के आप तेरा क्या होगा कालिया की बात कर रहे हैं, तो उसी पिक्चर में अगर राधा का रोल जो कि जया बच्चन ने किया था, वो कैरेक्टर के सीन दूसरी तरह के, दे आर वेरी सेंसिटिव सीन्स और वो बड़े सॉफ्ट हैं. आप शोले अगर फिर देखिएगा तो आपको मालूम होगा कि देयर इज अ साइलेंट लव स्टोरी बिटवीन अमिताभ बच्चन एंड जया, and there is hardly any exchange of dialogue. Never at any situation they have spoken to each other. At one stage she has said a line to him, he has not said anything. On the other, in other scene, he has spoken a line addressed to her and she has not answered. That's about all.
मतलब आपका कहने का ये कि उन्हीं दिनों में भी आपके मन में
उन्हीं दिनों में
कुछ ना कहो था.
जहाँ देखिए, वही मैं आपसे कह रहा हूँ कि अगर एक तरफ ये ग्रेगेरियस गब्बर है तो दूसरी तरफ वो भी उसी फिल्म में है, उसके लिए भी एक सर्टेन सेंसिटिविटी या दूसरा एस्थेटिक्स चाहिए, तो वो दोनों जगह है.
सब आप सेंसिटिविटी की बातें कर रहे हैं. 8, 9, 10 महीने हुए कि तरकश आपने छापी है. The critics say it's a set of poems full of pain, suffering, even cynicism. Yet it's a very popularly selling book. Are you surprised by its success?
Yes, I am. You see, I mean, when I had recited these poems to my friends, to people, to my well-wishers, to people whom I respect, and they had appreciated them. But the kind of response I got after the publication of this book, that really surprised me. I mean, in 8 months, if 3 editions of Hindi and 2 editions of Urdu and almost 100,000 CDs and cassettes are sold.
And played in cars, by the way. Played in cars. Isn't that surprising?
That is.
Huh?
I mean, it's a pleasant surprise, but nevertheless, it is a surprise.
Is it because you're fashionable, or is it because people genuinely have learned to appreciate Urdu poetry?
You see, it's difficult for me to decide that, but you see, I'll quote Mr. Sardar Jafri, who is one of the most respected literary figures in Urdu at the moment. He has written an article on Tarkash and he has titled it the first urban poet of Urdu. And he has pointed out something very interesting. He says that in England nobody writes in the language of Chaucer or Shakespeare or Tennyson. People write poetry in today's English. But somehow it has happened in our country that we speak one language, but when we sit down to write poetry, we start using language that was perhaps spoken some 50 years or 100 years or 150 years back. But this is one book of poetry or book of verse that not only has contemporary topics or contemporary subjects or contemporary concerns,
but
it has used contemporary language.
Were you doing that deliberately?
No, not at all. That's the only language I know.
So you were just
so again, it was not a matter of choice.
You were being true to yourself.
Yes.
Javed Sahab, when I look at your career, it spans Sholay to Tarkash. When I look at your music, it seems to go from Ek Do Teen and Papa Kehte Hain to Kuch Na Kaho. Is there a split personality somewhere inside, finding expression in all these different ways?
You see, if you don't have a split personality, you can't be creative. If you are only one person, then you are only living in one moment and you will not be able to create. Psychiatry totally believes that you have to be schizophrenic to some degree to be creative. The very desire to be creative tells that there is something abnormal about you. If you are a totally normal person, you won't have the desire to write poetry or make a painting or make a statue or whatever.
Well, in that case, Javed Sahab, let me say thank you very much for letting me talk to all the many Javed Akhtars sitting in front of me.
Thank you.
That's it for this week. I'm sure the many Javed Akhtars will be with us for a long time, making music, writing scripts, entertaining us with their poetry. But for tonight, goodbye.